Welcome back to this podcast series on game developers and their players. My name is Brian McKittrick. In today's episode, we will be discussing modding as a form of dialogue in more detail. As previously mentioned in the first episode, we can consider modding as a complex form of player-initiated dialogue. When players come together to discuss and share mods for a game, a series of games, or a game engine, it gives developers, and observers such as ourselves, another way to find out what the players think about them. We also know that a healthy, active modding community can serve as a valuable resource for finding fixes for bugs and inspiration for future content patches. So what else can we learn from modders and modding communities? In one sense, a modding community can become a pool of potential employees for future projects. After all, who better to work on a sequel? Someone whose hobby is breaking apart and putting back together the first game. Many developers, at least those that can afford to headhunt modders, enjoy this benefit of a prosperous modding community. Some go as far as to use work from the modders as a foundation for substantial additions to their game. We can see this in how Gaslamp Games used player-made content in the second DLC for Dungeons of Dreadmore. By working closely with their modding communities on content and updates to their games, the developer can earn themselves a reputation for giving a greater degree of authorship to their players than other developers. This is often a good thing as it gives new life to an otherwise unremarkable game, or turns a good game into an unforgettable one. Allowing players greater control through modding tools is an effective way to have players, in a sense, sell the game on player-made content alone. Games like Oblivion, Skyrim, and Minecraft serve as excellent examples of developers allowing for greater amounts of player-made content. All this information we've touched on before, but it serves as a good preface to our discussion of this episode's developer. Unlike the developers we looked at earlier, this developer is not based in Canada, but rather was founded in 1996 in Champaign, Illinois. They became renowned for a sci-fi FPS series set primarily on Mars, featuring a fairly unique engine for destructible terrain. While this game was relatively popular for its time, it was eventually overshadowed by the developer's next original series. Starting off as an almost shameless GTA clone, this series quickly made a name for itself by building upon solid gameplay with an over-the-top tone and narrative. This series is none other than that of Saints Row, the four-part saga that made developer Volition, now Deep Silver Volition, the king of ridiculous crime simulator games. And it is the Saints Row series that will be our catalyst for discussing Volition. While the first Saints Row game was released in 2006, it was somewhat unremarkable. While the tone and setting of the game were a touch outlandish, the plot and much of the gameplay did not stray too far from the formula that the GTA series had already established. It was really the second game that saw the series come into its own. An over-the-top, insane world with an open city to explore and fun gameplay. Saints Row 2, for many fans, is the best entry of them all. The next two games, Saints Row III and Saints Row 4, continued the trend of one-upping each previous entry, but for a variety of reasons, there is something of division among fans as to how well they received the games. Some felt that the later titles were too silly, or they left out certain parts of the formula from the second game, or made unwelcome modifications to how missions and activities worked. By no means did any of these additions or changes in the last two games mean that they were bad games. These games still received critical acclaim and praise. It was just that there were many people who felt they weren't as good as the second game. To go into more detail about how the changes between these series entries affected players' reception of the games, we shall go into how the degree of customization in the series. The character customizer in Saints Row 2 offered a staggering amount of control in just the player character's face alone. On top of that, there were a myriad of clothing options, and a nearly equal level of custom work you could do on any of the cars in the game. What changed with Saints Row 3 were that some of the body options were replaced with a simpler system. Instead of absolute fine control over a body that could be anywhere from emaciated to obese, female to male, or anything in between, Saints Row 3 limited the character's body to a spectrum of fat to muscle to skinniness ratio, and a specific gender had to be selected for each character. And even the skinniest option still had rather broad shoulders, giving the impression of having implanted shoulder pads at all times. Clothing options were also less varied than before. An example of this loss was that players could no longer alter certain articles of clothing separately, such as shoes and socks or some shirts and jackets. In exchange, however, the physics of the clothing and the body of the player character were improved, with cloth falling and flowing instead of being rigid and inflexible, as well as flesh falling and flowing instead of being relatively inflexible, although that caused some rather different impressions, shall we say, than just the clothing moving around. It seems likely this issue of trading one kind of complexity for another was simply due to limitations within the technology. But this was no deterrent for fans who relished the freedom of Saints Row 2, which leads into the modding community's actions with Saints Row 2, Saints Row the Third, and Saints Row 4. Of interest to our investigation is the degree of customization in the series, and how modding in Saints Row 2 brought the developers and the player community closer. While there are not as many mods available for Saints Row 2 as a game like Skyrim, there is one mod that drew together a community on its own. Created by a group of modders led by Idle Ninja, Gentlemen of the Row is a huge compilation of bug fixes, new vehicles, new clothes, new weapons, taunts, gang styles, character customization options, and all sorts of other fun additions to Saints Row 2. The PC port of Saints Row 2 was notorious for being quite difficult to play, as it was a fairly poor port of the console version. And the Gentlemen of the Row mod makes the game so much more accessible to play on the PC. Very quickly, this mega mod served as the foundation for a modding community for Saints Row 2, who worked together on tweaking, improving, and fixing the Gentlemen of the Row. When Saints Row the Third came along, it was not too long before Idle Ninja and other like-minded modders came together to put out Gentlemen of Steelport, which did a lot of the same that Gentlemen of the Row did to Saints Row 2. And while there is yet to be another compilation mod for Saints Row 4, Idle Ninja's efforts with the modding community did not go unnoticed by the game's developers. During the development of Saints Row 4, Idle Ninja was invited to see pre-release versions of the game and discuss how it felt to him. This act of bringing in a leading member of the modding community to look at the next game made Volition very popular. It's not something that just any developer can do, but in doing so, they improved their reputation tremendously, allowing them to further improve their new game with approval from the modders. In recent news, Idle Ninja was hired by Volition, another example of a developer turning to its modding community for new blood. While he will no longer be the administrator for the modding forums, he has promised to continue to answer questions as a Volition employee. And it is not just the modding forums that Idle Ninja frequents on a regular basis. A recent Let's Play of Saints Row 2 with the Gentlemen of the Row mod has Idle Ninja commenting in the thread. He also worked on the mod to specifically address issues the Let's Players had, eventually leading to, among many other things, train cars that acted like excitable puppies and jumped all over the place. As we can see from the Saints Row series, a healthy modding community does not always need quantity to survive. A high-quality mod and modders willing to interact, answer questions, get feedback, and be members of a community can drive a modding community to flourish. And capitalizing on a modding community is a great move to make, as it improves the developer's public image, and not just the modders alone. In order for a developer to improve their reputation, working together on their games with their modders is a great way to do that. The Gentlemen of the Row mods are available for the PC versions on idleninja.com, and you can learn more about the developers at dsvolition.com. You can also find the aforementioned Let's Play on the LP subforum at Something Awful, titled Saints Row 2, a carefully scripted narrative LP about friendship. Next time, we dip into how Let's Plays affect game developers, take a look at how celebrity status can sometimes be a good thing, and finally look at a developer that relates to the rest of the videos on Lab Ventures. I'm Brian McKittrick, and thank you for listening.